In this video, I'm going to deep dive into Incubus guitarist Mike Einziger's current live setup. If you can't get enough of that single coil twang, then this is the video for you. Now, to get the most accurate information for this video, I've been chatting to Preston, Mike's guitar tech, about his current live setup, and he has kindly given me some hints to set me on the path to this tone. I want to say a huge thank you to Preston, as he has been incredibly kind in giving up his time to talk to me about this stuff. So with this said, let's take a look at the guitar Mike is using these days. At quick glance, you may dismiss this as some kind of Fender Telecaster, but if you look closely, there isn't any brand name on the headstock. Mike isn't affiliated with any guitar brand these days, so this guitar was a custom build, completely handmade by a luthier in California. I don't know by who, as I haven't asked, as I would imagine both the person that made the guitar and Mike would potentially like to keep that to themselves. In terms of pickup, Preston believes these are Seymour Duncans, but he isn't sure on the exact model. Looking closely at Mike's bridge pickup, I can't see the Seymour Duncan branding anywhere on there. Browsing through the Seymour Duncan website, the more vintage spec sets don't have a logo on them, so my guess would be that the set Mike uses is one of these, but I really don't know. That is purely a guess. And lastly, Mike is always on his neck pickup, so we only have to worry about one pickup position. Now, in terms of my gear, I don't own a telly, but I had a vague memory of an Instagram post of Mike using his Jazzmaster when recording Circles for the Morning View 23 album. I do own a Jazzmaster, and so that is what I use to chase this tone. I have it set on the lead circuit and the neck pickup is selected. Next, let's move on to Mike's amps. He is still using dual Mesa Boogie Trem-O-Verb combos, but with the addition of a 2x12 extension cab underneath each amp. Both the combos and the extension cabs have Celestion Vintage 30 speakers in them. The most important and interesting part about the amps is what mode they are set to. If we look at this footage from last year, you can see that the channel lights for each amp is the same. What this means is that they are both on channel 1 and most likely both set to the clean mode on both amps, so Mike is using pedals to get his crunch and heavy tones. To an extent. Let me explain. The clean mode on the Trem-O-Verb has quite a decent amount of gain available, so my guess would be that one amp is probably set with a gain around 10 to 11 o'clock, so it stays nice and clean, and the other is more likely set to 1 o'clock or so to add a bit more grit to the signal. Mike can then use a couple of pedals to add more gain, and I'll talk about these in the next section. The dual amps pose a bit of a challenge to us mere mortals that don't have a Trem-O-Verb or just have the one, as we can't easily turn up the gain when we want a heavier sound. For me, I am lucky enough to own a Trem-O-Verb, but I recorded the cleaner parts first and then cranked the gain for any heavier tones. Now, this may not be ideal for everyone though, and I'm not sure of a solution to this. The Mesa type plugins that I own and I've talked about before stay very clean when you turn up the gain, and I'm not sure how other physical Mesa amps would respond to this. If you do have a slightly different Mesa amp, it's always worth trying upping the gain to see what happens. For those of you with the same amp, here are the EQ settings that worked for me. Mike's are probably different on the two amps, but as I only have one, I had to find a happy middle ground. Before we move on to effects pedals, some of you eagle-eyed tone hunters may have noticed the Marshall head and Mesa cab clone that is sat behind his two combos. This is just used for the front of house sound engineer to blend into Mike's dirty sound if they need a bit more mid-range in a particular venue. The Marshall doesn't affect his clean tone in any way, and the Mesa cab clone is just so they can change the virtual cab for the Marshall if they wish. In my playthroughs later on, I didn't blend in any kind of Marshall amp with these tones, so I've kind of disregarded this one for now. Now let's talk about pedals. Mike's chain is pretty much the same as it has been for years, except he has actually removed some pedals as the band are playing mostly Morning View on their current tour, and so he doesn't need certain pedals such as his real echo. I have a video all about Mike's pedal order, so the focus of this section is going to be the two pedals Mike is using to get his overdriven tones. First up, we have the Ernie Overdrive expression pedal. This is a unique overdrive that lets you blend in the amount of drive with the original clean signal. So as you push your foot down, the more drive is added to the signal. You can see and hear Mike do this throughout Incubus's current live sets. This pedal is only affecting his clean amp, the one set with the lower gain amount. Second, we have an MXR EVH 5150 overdrive that is only going into the dirty amp, so the one with a bigger bump on the gain. This pedal has a 3-band EQ section, a boost, and a built-in noise gate. I have no idea what the settings are for this pedal, so I've had to muddle through with my own gear. I don't own either of these pedals, so I've pulled my trusty Suhr Eclipse out of retirement to help get the job done. This is a really handy pedal for this situation, as it has two circuits, each independent of one another, to allow me to set the gain, level, and EQ differently on each side. I can use my first channel to change the amount of gain I want to hear in my clean signal. Here are my settings for both sides if you have the same pedal. Lastly, let's look at microphones and any post-processing I had to do. Once again, if we look at this live footage from last year, you can see two mics. One is easy to identify, and that is the classic Suhr SM57, but the other one is harder to pin down. This is a complete guess, but I think it might be an Audio-Technica AT3060, as I'm pretty sure it's a condenser mic, and the only one I could find that looks similar and can be positioned this way seems to be this mic. Once again, I was faced with a problem. I own an SM57, but the only condenser mic I have is the Suhr KSM32, this microphone, and comparing frequency response charts, this mic doesn't stack up to the others mentioned previously. I was a little bit stumped and didn't quite know what to do until I went to see the band live in London a few weeks ago, and I think I spotted a Sennheiser MD421 coupled with the SM57. I had already found and purchased an IR of a Mesa 2x12 closed back extension cab by 2 Notes, and this has an SM57 and an MD421 included. I loaded these up in my DAW and boom, the tone was pretty much there in front of me. Now I loaded these IRs with a plugin called Genome, which is also by 2 Notes. This is quite pricey as a standalone plugin, and you need to pay for the IR of the cab on top as well, although this isn't too expensive. If you do have some 2 Notes hardware, you should get Genome for free. I have a Captor X that my Trem-O-Verb is plugged into, and after registering this, I had a license for Genome for free, so don't buy it if you have some 2 Notes gear. Another option would be some IRs by York Audio that are based on the same Mesa 2x12 extension cab. They have these as an introduction to what they do, and you can get them for just $1. This does include an SM57 and an MD421 as well. Now the benefit of using the 2 Notes IRs is the fact that you can move the mics back in space and get more room sound, which when listening to the re-record of Circles as an example, it seems to be an important element to the intro tone. It sounds very roomy. Both versions of these IRs will work brilliantly, I'm sure, so it's up to you which one you go for. I'll add the mic settings I settled on in Genome for the clean and dirty amp on screen now. And lastly, on each track I have loaded a Neve 1073 plugin by Analog Obsession, and I've also added an SSL E-Series channel strip by Waves. Now I'm not doing anything with the EQ on the Neve plugin, but on the SSL I'm only boosting a tiny bit on the dirty amp, and this is only for the morning view examples. I am adding a digital EQ for the clean and dirty tones after all of this as well, and I will add these on screen now. Now let's put all of this into practice. Here are some sound examples of different Incubus songs using everything I've just talked about. I have double tracked these and I've had to edit the audio for the heavier tones. As I only have one amp, I've recorded the cleaner sounds first and then upped the gain on the amp for the heavier tones, and then I have edited everything together. With that said, I hope you enjoy these clips. So I'm pretty happy with this attempt at getting Mike's current sound. It's not totally the same as Mike's, but I am using a lot of different gear to him. If you're really into this tone, you'd probably get even closer with a Telecaster, the Ernie Ball Overdrive, and the 5150 Overdrive, as I mentioned previously. I hope you've enjoyed this one, my friends, and if you like this video, I think you'll enjoy the video on screen now about how to get Mike's original Morning View tone. Thank you so much for watching.